For today's Dhamma talk, I'm going to be speaking as well as sharing with you, this sutta, which is actually extracted from the Anguttara Nikaya, the Nikaya, the Anguttara Nikaya, which actually has got 11 books. Okay, and this is actually extracted from the book number 8, and this sutta is sutta number 54. And 8.54, and the title of the sutta is actually Digha Janu Sutta. And this sutta is interesting because it actually focuses, and the main emphasis, of this conversation between this lay person, Digha Janu, and the Blessed One, the Buddha, is actually in respect of, how a lay Buddhist should actually conduct himself such that, he can actually lead a well-balanced lay Buddhist life. Now, if you actually read the Sutta Pitaka, right, the Pali Canon, the various Nikayas, you actually will notice that the Buddha, the Blessed One, in many suttas actually makes reference to the lay Buddhist life, as a life that's actually full of dust. The lay Buddhist household life, is actually a life that's full of dust. Unlike the life of a renunciant or the monastic, where the life is described to be polished, like a conch shell. So as you can see, even more than 2,500 years ago, the Buddha, the situation that the lay people were in at the time during the Buddha's time, it was actually not different from our time currently. Where the lay people, they were very much preoccupied, engaged in their respective occupations and businesses. They were busy, attending to their families. So much so, that they actually tend to neglect the spiritual life. So that's why the Buddha actually describes the household life as one that's actually full of dust, because we are so preoccupied with our jobs, like our occupations. We all know, during when in our occupations, we actually face, with lots of challenges, and difficulties, that actually require us to attend to, and of course, at home, we have actually our families, that we should take care of, whether materially as well as emotionally, So that's why it is very important as lay Buddhists for us to actually be aware, that as far as our lay life is concerned, house life is concerned, of course, it's important for us to attend to our mundane duties, but at the same time, must also ensure that we do not lose sight, in terms of our spiritual practice, as well as the duties that we owe, to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So back to this topic again, in terms of well-balanced lay Buddhist life, So the issue that we are that we are faced with nowadays, a lot of people actually ask ourselves, like, what does it mean, to actually have a balanced lay Buddhist life? Does it mean that as long as I attend to my mundane duties well, and I just make sure that I do not do anything unwholesome, do not actually commit anything that actually are harmful to other people, and that itself is actually considered a well-balanced life? Or does it mean that we just practice dana, just practice generosity, attend to the needs of the sangha, do dana? That itself, is it actually considered as well-balanced? Or perhaps some people might think, maybe it's good enough that I just keep my precepts, and observe my morality, and that itself is deemed as a well-balanced lay Buddhist life. Or perhaps some people might think that maybe I just meditate, and cultivate my mind, and that without actually doing without actually performing dana or observing sila, and that itself is considered as well-balanced. So we have actually a lot of different interpretations, that are actually being held, by lay Buddhists. in terms of what actually comprises a well-balanced lay Buddhist life. So it's very important that let's hear what the Buddha says, about living a well-balanced lay Buddhist life. So for this Dhamma talk, I've actually extracted this talk, excuse me, from this Anguttara Nikaya 8.54, and this sutta actually, happened, in a town, called the Kakarapata, and in this town, they actually live, the people, who actually call themselves the Koreans. And one day, this person, this Korean, by the name of Diga Janu, he is actually a lay person. He actually went to see the Blessed One.
Hi, brother. I think you are muted. Maybe you could unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you much better now.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so when this Diga Janu, he went to see the Buddha. He actually asked the Buddha, a question, in terms of for lay people, he's actually concerned for lay people. How he asked the Buddha a very direct question, that as lay people, how should lay people actually conduct themselves in order they can be happy in this life, as well as future lives. So he asked the Buddha, like as lay people, we actually enjoy a sensual pleasure, and we live crowded among spouses and children, and we use kasi fabrics. Sorry, excuse me. And as lay people, he says that they actually enjoy the use of kasi fabrics and sandalwood, and they wear garlands and stands and creams and handle gold and silver. So he actually asked the Buddha, said, Blessed One, Buddha, please tell us, for lay people like us, how do we actually live our lives, such that we can actually attain happiness and well-being in this life as well as in future lives to come. So in response to this, the Buddha actually tells him, that there are actually these 4 qualities, that lead to a lay person's happiness and well-being in this life. Okay, first of all, the Buddha actually addresses the happiness in this lifetime first. So the Buddha says, in order for you to attain happiness and well-being in this very life itself, there are 4 things that you must actually be mindful, and cultivate. First is being consummate in initiative. Consummate means being accomplished. That's another word. Being accomplished in initiative. And second is being accomplished in vigilance. Being accomplished in friendship, and to maintain one's livelihood in tune. So these are the 4 things that the Blessed One actually told Diga Janu, that must be cultivated for happiness in this life. So what does the Buddha mean when he says accomplished initiative? So the Buddha, when he says to be accomplished initiatives, he explains, that when for a lay person, by whatever occupation he makes in this lifetime, whatever occupation that he has, he must be clever and untiring at it. He must exert effort, and he must be diligent, and he must also be good and skillful, at what he does. And he must actually possess the discrimination in his techniques and enough to arrange and carry it out. Means that you must actually know all the technical knowledge that you know about your job, whichever occupation, whether you are involved in whatever occupation, whether it's a service or in terms of trading or goods, you must be good at it, and you must actually have the knowledge. And on top of that, you must have the perseverance, and you must have the passionate enthusiasm. You must have a diligence in carrying out your duties in whatever job that you do. And that is what the Buddha means by being accomplished in initiative. And secondly, the Buddha says that you must be accomplished in vigilance, because when, as a layperson, through your striving and effort, through the strength of your arm and the sweat of your eye, for your browser, that you manage to amass, a lot of this wealth, right? Then you must ensure that you protect these properties and assets through vigilance and through care and vigilance, so that the Buddha says neither kings nor the thieves will make off with your assets, and neither fire or water will sweep it away, and hateful airs will make off with it. So the Buddha emphasizes that once you have amassed the assets, you must also ensure that you protect them carefully. You comply with the regulations and laws imposed by the authorities, so that your assets will not be confiscated. And at the same time, make sure that you guard after your assets carefully. So these are the two the first two items that the Buddha actually mentioned. Thirdly, the Buddha says that in order for you to be happy in this life, you must actually forge admirable friendships. And the Buddha, when he says, what does the Buddha actually mean when he says that you must actually cultivate and forge an admirable friendship? The Buddha, in this case, the Buddha does not refer to just making friends by on a superficial level, where you actually socialize with your friends and go for meals and that sort of thing. The Buddha does not actually refer to that. When the Buddha, what the Buddha means by admirable friendship is that you must actually spend time, with householders, whether young or old, who are actually advanced in virtue. You must try to associate yourselves with people, who actually have very high moral standards, and they actually guard their virtues and morality. And you should actually talk to them and engage with them in discussions. And if you know that this friend, he's actually accomplished in conviction, means that he has actually great faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and then you should try to emulate them, and try to set them as your example, as a good example for you to emulate and to in your practice, in your spiritual practice. And if you find that your friend, is actually accomplished in virtue, morality, he guards his virtue very conscientiously, then you should also emulate your friend in terms of his virtue. And if you find that your friend, is very consummate in generosity, he actually cultivates charity, then you should also emulate him. And lastly, if you find that he is very accomplished in terms of his wisdom, you find that he meditates, and he is able to develop wisdom to a very to a high level. He's accomplished in discernment and wisdom. Then you should also emulate, and try to discuss with him, and try to learn from him as to how the spiritual path. How meditation should actually be practiced in order to develop wisdom within you. So that's what the Buddha means by saying admirable friendship as a third factor to actually attain happiness in this life. Next, the Buddha says that you should also maintain one's livelihood in tune, in balance. So what does the Buddha actually mean by that? So if you see, the Buddha, even more than 2,500 years ago, the Buddha himself was actually a very skillful, I would say a very skillful chartered accountant. He knows, he actually asked the layperson to be aware of your income and expenditure, to such that you maintain your livelihood in tune, so that you are neither a spendthrift, means you actually splash your cash and you spend without any limits, and you spend a lot beyond your income. And at the same time, you should not also be a penny pincher, means that you should not be a miser, such that that it's so difficult for you even to even spend a cent of your income, even though you earn a lot. So that is actually too extreme, that the Buddha says that you shouldn't actually be doing. But contrary to that, the Buddha says that you must actually be aware, of your income and expenditure, such that you maintain a good balance. So the Buddha says, if a lay person has a small income, but you maintain a livelihood that's so grand, and so luxurious, then you're living, and you're devouring your wealth like a fruit tree eater, the Buddha says. And if the person has a large income, but he maintains a miserable livelihood, he's very miserly, and he's very unwilling to actually spend his income, then the Buddha says that these people will say that this clansman will actually die of starvation. So the Buddha says that as a fourth factor for you to maintain happiness, you must actually maintain a balanced livelihood. And the Buddha, at the same time, in terms of maintaining a livelihood, balanced livelihood, the Buddha actually talks about 4 drains on one's store of wealth, as well as the 4 inlets. Because when the Buddha talks about maintaining a balance in your livelihood, the Buddha says that you must always look at your income like as though you're looking at the scale. Which side is actually tipping? Is it tipping? Is it actually well balanced? So the Buddha says that if you need to maintain a balance, you must look at your financial position as though there are 4 inlets and as well as 4 outlets. That's what Buddha says. The 4 inlets is actually where the income actually flows in, and the 4 outlets are actually where the money is spent. So the Buddha says that you must actually be aware of these 4 drains and 4 inlets. So the Buddha says that there are these 4 drains on one's store of wealth, where whatever income you earn is actually being drained out in a very excessive manner. And the Buddha says that these 4 drains are basically debauchery or indulgence in sexual misconduct, and secondly is actually indulgence in intoxicating drink, and you drink, you indulge in drinking a lot of these intoxicants, and thirdly, you indulge in gambling, and fourthly, you indulge in evil friendship, companionship, and friends who are evil and who do not observe morality. And how about the 4 inlets? The 4 inlets, of course, the Buddha says that if you do not indulge in these 4 things, being not indulge in sexual misconduct, drinking intoxicants, gambling, and forming admirable friendship and companions who are actually very moral and upright. So in this conversation, Buddha tells this Digajanu, this layperson, that these are the 4 qualities that lead to a person's happiness and well-being in this life. Okay, as I just mentioned to you, the 4 items. So if you see from the Sutta Pitaka, right, the Buddha, other than this sutta, Buddha actually in various other suttas also talks about how lay people should conduct themselves such that we are able to attain happiness in this very life itself. And there is very interesting sutta from the Sutta Nipata 1.6 that's actually called the Downfall Sutta. So in this sutta, there was one night during the wee hours in the morning. There was this Dewa that actually came to visit the Buddha, at the Anathapindika's monastery where the Buddha was staying near Savatthi. So during when the Dewa came to see the Buddha, right, he actually asked the Buddha a question, that he actually wanted to find out from the Buddha, that what are the causes that lead to a man's decline? Pray tell Buddha, O Gautama, that the causes of downfall. So in response to this question, the Buddha actually told this Dewa, various items that lay people should not actually indulge in those, because if we do any of this, then we are creating the likelihood that we will actually face downfall in our lay life. For example, the first one, Buddha says that this person finds the wicked dear to him. He actually likes to actually mingle and make friends with the wicked. And secondly, he is actually being fond of sleep, fond of company, very indolent, lazy, and very irritable, and neglecting his duties. And Buddha also says that this, if a person is well-to-do, very rich, but he does not support his father and mother, who are old, and need, people to take care of, and if he does not do that, even though he actually has the means to do it, this is the cause of one's downfall. And to deceive by falsehood a Brahman Brahmin or ascetic, or other mendicant. That is also one of the causes. And this, if a person actually has ample gold and food, but he enjoys the luxuries alone, he doesn't share his wealth, that's also another factor. And to be proud of one's birth, and clan, and to despise others, that's also another downfall. And if this person actually indulges, in drinking, he's a drunkard, he gambles, squanders all that he earns. Of course, this is also another cause for downfall. And another one Buddha says is not to be contented with one's wife, and to be seen with the wives of others. So that is clearly, a downfall. And interesting, the Buddha also says that if a person is is old and advanced in age, but he takes a young wife, and he is unable to sleep because of jealousy of her, that she's seen with other men. There's also another downfall. And to place authority in a man or a woman, who indulges in drinking, and gambling and squandering, then of course it's a downfall as well. And the last one, the Buddha says that this person, he is of vast ambition, but he actually uses a lot of slender means to actually attain, his objective, to attain his ambition. So he actually indulges, for example, like backstabbing, and slandering others, just to actually gain his ambition. So that's also a downfall. And in the next sutta, like this Digha Nikaya 31, I'm sure you are very, very familiar in this Sigalo Vada Sutta, where the Buddha actually gives advice to this layman called Sigala. And in this sutta, the Buddha actually highlights the 6 channels, and the wealth is actually dissipated. If one engages in these activities. These, of course, include indulgence in intoxicants, and then loitering or sauntering in streets at unseemly hours, and then frequenting theatrical shows, going for movies and theater shows all the time, indulge in gambling, and you like to associate, with evil, foolish friends, and person is idle all the time, very lazy, not attending to his duties, and not being diligent and puts in effort in his work. So these are the causes that will lead to the dissipation of health for a lay person. So as you can see, the Buddha in this, in various sutta, we can see the Buddha actually provides a lot of sound advice to lay people, as to how we should conduct our lives, such that we can maintain happiness and harmony, as lay people in our household lives. But at the same time, we must also be aware that we should also not neglect, in terms of the requirements for us to cultivate ourselves spiritually, and that is also evident, in various sutta, as I will show you later. I will show you now. For example, in this Sutta Anguttara Nikaya 7.7d, right? The Buddha actually quoted this saying from this teacher called Araka, and he actually agrees with what this Araka says. So what this Araka says, that he actually says that next to nothing, is the life of human beings, limited, trifling, and of much struggle, difficulties, and despair. So this Araka actually compares a human life as like a dew drop on the tip of a blade of a grass, that it vanishes with the rising of sun and does not even stay long. So human life is actually like a dew, right, at the tip of a blade. So as long as the sun rises, it actually vanishes in no time. So I think that is very, very true. I mean, we live our lives like what, 75 average, or maybe even about 80, and actually it's very fast. I mean, before you know it, you are already so much time has passed, and sometimes you wonder, where has all the time gone to, right? I mean, before you know it, you're already middle age, and after that, perhaps, age is catching up. So what he says is actually very true. It's like a dewdrop, on a blade of grass. And secondly, he also gives us a very good example. It's like a river flowing down from the mountains, so swift and so rapid, that is gushing down, from the mountain, non-stop, not even without a second where this river will actually stand, right? If you see a waterfall or a rapid, it just gushes down, so rapidly and so with such force, without even a single second, it stops. So the life of human being is also like that, it's like a river flowing down from the mountain, non-stop, and we are all moving towards the inevitable, which is actually death, whether that is something we must also admit and be mindful of. Ever since birth, and we are actually moving towards the inevitable destination, just like the river from the mountain. We are moving towards death as the final destination for mortals like us. Okay, and of course, okay, actually, okay, and okay, this slide actually earlier, I put in this slide, in terms of actually this slide actually I meant it for the earlier section where the Buddha actually talks about as lay people how we actually should guard our wealth. So I put in this slide earlier, to actually highlight that Buddha actually, he is actually such a wonderful teacher, that he actually tells us exactly how we should actually spend our wealth. He says that firstly, when you get your wealth, you must actually make yourself happy, and secondly, you must actually make your parents happy, by meeting by actually looking after them, and meeting their needs. And you must also then look after your wife and children, your slaves, workers, and servants happy. And thirdly, then you must actually look after your friends and companions, and you must also make sure that you do not lose your wealth, by making sure that your wealth is not actually lost due to fire or floods or bandits or unloved heirs. And the Buddha also says, if you have after spending all this, you should also make the 5 offerings to your relatives, your guests, your ancestors, your king, and the deities. So if you look at this sutta, I actually find it very interesting, because the Buddha actually asks that we make 5 offerings to the ancestors, to the ancestors as well as the deities. So a lot of times I actually hear that, a lot of Buddhists or even some monks tell us that, for example, the Chinese practice of making offerings to ancestors or at the grave, that itself is un-Buddhistic, and is contrary to the Buddha's teaching. And you should also bring food and make offerings to deities, like our Dato Kong, or what, and they actually scoff, at such practices that these are actually un-Buddhistic. But if you look at the sutta, the Buddha in this Anguttara Nikaya actually asks us to make offerings, means food offerings to ancestors as well as deities. So we must take note of what the Buddha says. So it's actually not the offering itself, but I think it's actually the mind, our intention, our volition, that's actually more important when we perform these acts. And the Buddha also says that lastly, after you have done all this, then you should also make offerings to the ascetics, to the Brahmins, to the ascetics, who are actually well practiced, who tame themselves and calm themselves and train themselves for Nibbana. Okay, so that was about the slide that I missed out earlier, on the Buddha telling us how we should actually spend our wealth. So earlier I told you about this Araka's teaching, right? About the importance of the spiritual practice. So another interesting sutta that actually found also is actually from this Samyutta Nikaya 3.25 is actually the simile of the mountains. So in this sutta, there was a conversation between King Persuasion of the Kosala kingdom, with the Buddha, and it was actually in the middle of the day when this King Persuasion came to see the Buddha. And he told the Buddha, that as a king, I was engaged in all sort of royal affairs. I was so busy, and with this issue on sovereignty, I had to look after the kingdom, and I'm also obsessed, by greed and sensual pleasure, and as a king, I also conquer a great sphere of territory on earth. So, he's telling Buddha that, I'm very busy, and, as a busy king, I'm actually quite intoxicated by all these things. So the Buddha actually tells King Persuasion that he gives this king personality, you know, a simile, you know, an example. He said that there was this person, what he did, there was this person who came to you and tell you that, you know, I just came from the east direction, you know, and there I saw a great mountain, you know, as high as a cloud, you know, and this mountain is actually coming this way, you know, moving towards this direction, you know, and it's crushing all living beings in its path. And so the Buddha tells this king personality that, announce to you, great king, you know, that aging and death are rolling in onto you, just like this mountain that's actually rolling in from the four directions. When aging and death are rolling onto you, what should you do? So the Buddha says that when you have death, this aging and death rolling upon you, what else should be done but Dhamma conduct, right conduct, skillful deeds and meritorious deeds? So the Buddha is telling the king personality, yes, you know, as the king, you know, you actually have got a lot of mundane duties, you know, you look after your kingdom, you know, and you know, you do a lot of, you do your duties as the king, but at the same time, you must also be aware that death, aging and death, you know, are rolling onto you, you know, just like a mountain coming from the four directions. And we must also be aware that there is this sutta from 5.8 and 5.57, where the Buddha actually asks all of us to contemplate constantly, you know, whether you are a monastic or a lay person, that there's these five facts that one should reflect upon as often, you know, as possible. I am subject to aging, you know, not beyond aging. I'm subject to illness, not beyond illness. And I'm subject to death, not beyond death. You know, so as a lay person, you know, or as a mortal, we are not free from any of this, and all these three inevitable phenomena of aging, illness, and death, you know, will come to us, you know, sooner or later. You know, it's just, we just don't know when, you know, but it will come one day. And as a mortal, you know, I will also grow different. You know, whatever that's dear to me will one day separate from me. Okay, that is the eventuality of life, inevitable. And I'm also owner of my actions, heir to my actions. So whatever I do, good or evil, you know, that I will actually be the heir to these actions. So from this, we must be aware, you know, that this aging, sickness, and death and separation from the whatever that's dear and appealing to us will happen one day. So we must also be aware and be mindful, you know, and take heed of what the Buddha says, and to ensure that we do not neglect our spiritual practice. So again, in this book called From the Book of Trees, 3.29, the Buddha actually gives a very interesting simile called the blind person. You know, it's from AN 3.29. So the Buddha says that in this world, there are three kinds of persons found existing. What are these three? There is a blind person, and there's a one-eyed person and two-eyed person. And so what bhikkhus is a blind person? So this blind person, the Buddha says, is someone who lacks the kind of eye which one can acquire wealth. And at the same time, he lacks a kind of eye where he actually is able to differentiate what is wholesome from unwholesome qualities. So that is a completely blind person. And what is a one-eyed person? A one-eyed person is a kind of person he has the ability to acquire wealth, but he lacks the kind of eye where he's able to differentiate wholesome and unwholesome. Means that, you know, he does not actually pay much attention to spiritual cultivation, you know, but he's actually more concerned with acquiring wealth. And how about the two-eyed person? The Buddha says that this two-eyed person, of course, is balanced. You know, he's able to attend to his mundane duties in terms of acquiring wealth. At the same time, you know, he does not neglect his spiritual duties, and he's able to differentiate wholesome and unwholesome. So this is a very interesting sutta from 3.29. And I'm always amazed at how the Buddha is able to formulate such appropriate and such apt similes when it comes to delivering a certain point to us. And in this sutta, from the book of 8, the Buddha actually then talks about there's this 4 qualities that lead to a person's happiness and well-being in time to come. Okay, this 8.54, which is the sutta. So after you know, knowing, you know, the importance of spiritual cultivation, then in this Anguttara Nikaya 8.54, this Digha Janu Sutta, the Buddha then went on to actually explain to Digha Janu, you know, what are the 4 qualities that should be cultivated such that, you know, you can be happy, you know, in lives to come. Means, you know, we have when the body breaks up, and you gain rebirth, in the subsequent destination, how do you ensure that you prepare yourselves, for death, such that, that the next stop, you actually go to a happy destination. So the Buddha says that in order for you to be happy in next life, you must have 4 qualities. Firstly, you must be accomplished, in faith, or what we call saddha. Secondly, accomplished in virtue, your sila. Accomplished in generosity, your chaga. And then accomplished in discernment with your panya. So the Buddha then talks about these 4 important qualities you must cultivate as a lay person, for happiness, for happiness in lives to come. What we call the saddha, sila, chaga, panya. Okay, first of all, what is accomplished in faith? The Buddha says that when a person is accomplished in faith, he actually is convinced, he's fully convinced, of the Buddha or the Tathagata's awakening and fully enlightenment, that he's fully enlightened, that the Buddha is actually worthy, arahant, and rightly self-awakened, samma sambuddho, like what we normally chant, for the 9 qualities of the Buddha, perfect in knowledge and conduct, vijacharana sampano, sugato, well gone, loka vidu, an expert, with regard to the world, anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati, excellent trainer of those fit to be tamed, and satta deva manusana, teacher of divine and human beings, awakened. This is called being. So when you're convinced of this, you're actually called accomplished in faith. Next, accomplished in virtue means that you abstain from breaching the 5 precepts, or breaking the 5 precepts, and what we know in terms of taking life, stealing, being involved in illicit sexual conduct, abstain from falsehood, and abstain from intoxicants that cause heedlessness. And to be accomplished in generosity, the Buddha says that the person is fully generous, open-handed, and is not miserly. And being accomplished in wisdom, the Buddha says that this person, is accomplished, he's able to discern, and he's able to see, know and see the arising and passing away of all phenomena, of all sankhara, of all constructed phenomena. He's actually have the noble vision, he's penetrating and leading to the right ending of stress. So this accomplished in wisdom is very much, like that of Sotapan, a stream enterer, because he's able to discern, the arising and passing away, and is noble, penetrating, and it leads to ending of stress. And so you see, this Buddha actually keeps emphasizing, in the sutta, right? This 4 qualities, what we call the saddha, sila, chaga, panya. And you see from the sutta, in various sutta, that you see from the Nikayas, where the Buddha keeps emphasizing about this saddha, sila, chaga, panya. One of these is actually from AN 5.47, where the Buddha actually talks about the 5 kinds of wealth to the bhikkhus. He says, what are these 5 kinds of wealth? Wealth of faith, virtue, and of course the Buddha includes learning in this case. Means that you are conversant with what the Buddha taught, and you learn, you remember what the Buddha taught, in the various discourses, and you actually have the wealth of generosity and wisdom. And of course, in AN 7.6, the Buddha also talks about this saddha, sila, chaga, panya as one of the 7 treasures. And of course, the Buddha here talks about also the treasure of conscience and concern, and also the treasures of listening as well. So here the Buddha talks about the 7 treasures, and again, it actually covers the saddha, sila, chaga, panya. So as one of the 7 treasures. Okay, next, then the Buddha also talks about the importance, of saddha, sila, chaga, panya. In this interesting sutta, the Buddha in 4.61, the Buddha actually talks about this, the wishes that normal householder will normally wish for. So most householders, they will actually have these 4 wishes as common people. Some people, they will normally wish, may wealth come to me, may I be rich, may fame come to me. May fame come to me, and may I live long and have a long lifespan, and when my body breaks up, after death, may I be reborn in a good destination in the heavenly world. So this seem to be the 4 common wishes that most householders have, right? So the Buddha says, if you actually want to have these 4 wishes fulfilled, and come to fruition, then you must be accomplished in, again, Sada Sila Chagapanya. So the Buddha again talks about Sada Sila Chagapanya. Okay, and again, in this Anguttara Nikaya, this sutta, the Buddha, in this very interesting sutta, the Buddha actually talks about referring to these 2 people who are not easy to repay. Okay, and who are these 2 people? Your mother and father. The Buddha says, even if you were to carry your mother on one shoulder and your father on the other shoulder for 100 years, and every day you look after them by massaging and bathing them and rubbing their limbs, and if your parents were to defecate and urinate on your shoulders, that will still not be sufficient for you to repay your parents. And why is that? And on top of that, if you were to actually make your mother and father as the ruler, sovereignty over this great earth with 7 treasures, it's still not sufficient for you to repay your parents. And why is that? Because your mother and father do much for children. They care for them, nourish them, and they introduce them in this world. So the Buddha says that no matter how much you do, to look after your parents, like what the Buddha has described just now, being parents on your shoulders, that's still not enough. But the Buddha says that in order for you to repay your parents, you must establish your parents in 4 things: the conviction, the virtue, the generosity, as well as establish them in wisdom. Again, the Buddha actually emphasizes Sada Sila Jagapanya. So if you can establish these 4 things for your parents, then to this extent, you have actually repaid your father and mother. And if you look at it in terms of Sada, right, why do you think that Sada is actually important? The Buddha says that there's actually this 3 kinds of faith. One is faith in the Buddha. Second is faith in the Dhamma and Sangha. And the Buddha says those who have faith in the Buddha have faith in the foremost. And those who have faith in the foremost, the result will be foremost. That's why the faith is very important. And secondly, if you have faith in the Dhamma, you actually have faith is in the teaching that's the foremost teaching, and the result will be the foremost. And those who have faith in the Sangha have faith in in the foremost, and the result will also be foremost. These are the 3 foremost kinds of faith. So that is something that we must also be aware, because faith is something very important. And talking about faith, I just want to share with you this sutta also from, it's actually from the Khuddaka Nikaya, called this Mata Kundali. Actually, this Mata Kundali, right, he was actually a Brahmin, and his father was actually very stingy, he was very miserly, to the extent that when he was very ill, right, the father didn't even want to bring him to see the doctor to save on the doctor's fees, and he actually tried to cure the son himself. And because of that, due to jaundice, right, he was actually on the verge of dying, and even then, the father actually placed him on the terrace, such that nobody would come into the house to see how rich he was. So so when this Mata Kundali was actually very sick, right, and lying, on the bed outside the house on the terrace, then all of a sudden, he actually saw the Buddha actually walking by, and who had actually, and he actually held such great faith in the Buddha. He thinks that, the Buddha actually had got such great wisdom and pure mind. He actually has realized everything about this world, and in his heart, he actually had a lot of very strong sada, in the Buddha when he saw him, and he worshipped him, And because of this meritorious deed alone, by having the faith in the Buddha just before his death, he was actually reborn in the Davatimsa heaven, as a Deva. So because of this, and of course, in this sutta, then this Deva then came down, and saw his father weeping at the graveyard, and of course he also tried to pretend that he was weeping, and when the father asked him, then he said, I'm weeping because I want the sun and the moon to be the wheels of my a cart or something, and this father told him, actually you're so silly, I mean, moon and sun, how can you actually have take the moon and sun as wheels? Then this Deva, who was his previous son, then he told his father that you are even more foolish, because you're crying over, somebody who has actually passed away, and who you never see again. At least I can still see the sun and moon, but you are crying over, somebody who has died and buried, and you can never see him again. So because of that, the father then came to realization, and then from there he took refuge in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So from this story, we see that, this faith is actually something that's very wonderful. Just before death, if you have great faith, and contemplate the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, you has the potential to bring you to a good destination. And of course, in terms of sila, we all know from my previous talks in terms of how important it is to keep the 5 precepts. And of course, in terms of the 10 unwholesome actions, like I told you, the 3, 4, 3, 3 by actions, 4 by speech, and 3 by mind, which I also spoke about in quite detail in the last talk. So that is also important to be accomplished, in our sila, our morality. And of course, I also mentioned about keeping the 8 precepts during Uposatha days, where the Buddha actually says if you actually keep this Uposatha, you actually are creating the potential to actually be born, in actually heavenly realms. And the Buddha then talks about, if you're actually in the four great king heavenly realm, one day is actually 50 human years, and you're actually in Tavatimsa, then one day there is actually 100 human years. So this is the wonderful of being accomplished, in morality. And of course, like I mentioned to you, in this sutta 10.177, this sutta on Janu Soni, remember I told you that if you actually keep on doing dana, but you actually neglect your sila, then it's very likely that you actually be born as a pet dog or pet cat, or a pet horse, or royal elephant, or royal horse, or royal stallion, because of the dana you've done, you enjoy a lot of luxuries and comfort, material comfort, but you are actually an animal, because you don't keep your sila. Then again, this sutta, Buddha actually talks about, the importance of keeping the 8 precepts, like I mentioned to you, 10.46, in terms of that you must also make sure you actually observe your sila. And in terms of accomplish in generosity, in Chaga, of course, there are this interesting sutta from EN 5.34, where the Buddha actually describes this general siha, in terms of benefits that you get if you actually do practice generosity. As a person who is generous, a master of giving, you are actually dear and charming to people, and people actually admire one who gives. And thirdly, your reputation goes far and wide, because people know that you are actually a very generous person. And when you approach any assembly or people, you approach the assembly confidently and without embarrassment. And upon the break of your body, you appear in a good destination in the heavenly world. So these are the wonderful benefits of practicing generosity. And then I also want to highlight share with you this sutta from AN 5.31. So the question now is, what if somebody actually practices sila, but he doesn't practice dana? This is the reverse from the other scenario where I told you. In this case, the person actually cultivates his sila, but he doesn't do dana at all. So this was the question that Princess Sumana actually asked the Buddha. One day, this princess, together with 500 of his royal maidens and chariots, went to see the Buddha. And upon seeing the Buddha, right, so this princess actually asked the Buddha, suppose there were 2 disciples, equal in faith, ethics, and wisdom. These 2 noble disciples, they actually cultivate their sila well and the wisdom. But one is the giver, and one is not. So when their body breaks up, right, they actually are reborn in a good place, and because they look after their sila, so because of that, they are reborn in a heavenly realm. But when they become gods, devas, is there any distinction between the devas, these 2 devas? The Buddha says, yes, there will be, Samana. As a god, as a deva, the one who was a giver will surpass the other 5, surpass the other in 5 respects. The person who gives, who practices dana, he actually has got a much longer divine lifespan, and he has got beauty, and splendor, and he's much happier, he's a lot of happiness, fame, and sovereignty, over the, gods, they actually have the territories and sovereignty. So if you are a giver, right, so you actually surpass the other one who doesn't give in these 5 respects. And then the Princess Sumana said, what if they pass away and come back to human realm? Is there any distinction? The Buddha says, yes, there would be. As a human being, the person who actually gives actually surpass the other one who doesn't give in also 5 things: human lifespan, beauty, happiness, fame, and sovereignty. And then this princess says, what if they actually go forth, and they from the lay life they actually go into homelessness, means they become monastics, as monks? Would there be any distinction between them? The Buddha says, yes, there would be. The one who actually gives, the monk who practices a lot of giving, he usually get a lot of invitations for robes, alms food, lodging, and medicine, and supplies when he's sick. Rarely, without invitation. So, he gets a lot of invitation, for all these basic requisites. And the person who doesn't give, this monastic who doesn't give, then he does not give. He does not get, as many invitations to accept these basic requisites. And when living with other spiritual practitioners, right, the person, this monk who gives, is usually treated agreeably, by body, speech, and mind, by the other spiritual companions, and rarely disagreeably. So he also gets good treatment, and well treated by his spiritual companions, as a renunciant. So you can imagine the benefits of this giving is so far and wide, that he actually rolls over, from life to life, whether you're a deva or a human or as a monk, this effects tend to roll over. So so this Princess Sumana is so amazed, that he actually says, but of course before that, this Princess Sumana said, if these 2 monks actually attain perfection, means they become arahants. Is there any distinction between them? Then of course the Buddha says, I say there's no difference between freedom of one and freedom of the other. It means both of them achieve arahants. Means no more difference between them. So the Princess Sumana said, oh, this is amazing. Just this much is quite enough to justify giving, right? Because marriage is indeed helpful, for those who become God's human beings and renunciants. Then the Buddha actually agrees with this princess. So it is, Sumana. It is quite enough to justify, giving gifts and do marriage, because marriages are helpful for those who have become God's humans and renunciants. So we have to make sure that, other than sila, we must also practice dana, generosity, from this sutta itself. And in terms of our spiritual practice, we can also see that other than this sada, sila, chaga, the next one is of course being accomplished in wisdom. And so why is this accomplished in wisdom important? From this SN 2.99, we can see the Buddha actually tells a monk that the reason why that we have been actually rolling on in this samsara, for so long without a beginning, is because of what? Because we are hindered by ignorance and fettered by craving, And as long as we are beset by ignorance, right, I don't say there's an ending of suffering and stress. So the very beginning point of all this samsara is because of what? Because of ignorance and because of our asavas, because of this mental inflows, these taints, that actually cause this ignorance. Because ignorance, there's actually craving, and because of craving, we keep on rolling on. So the Buddha says it's very important that we cultivate accomplishment in wisdom, so that we can cut the whole process, stop the whole process of this dependent origination that cause us to roll on and on. So the next question is, how do we practice for you to be accomplished in Sada, Sila, Chagapanya, like what the Buddha says, tells this Digajanu, And for this, we refer to this sutta called SN 55.3, where the Buddha actually tells this Nandaka, the chief minister of Lichavis, he tells, the Buddha tells him that if a person is a stream winner, is a sotapan, he actually has got verified confidence in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and he's endowed with sila, that is actually unspotted, is unbroken. So it's actually untarnished and well praised by the wise. So these are the characteristics for a sotapan. So when we say the sotapan actually has got verified confidence, right? What does he mean by verified confidence? Actually, in Pali, is actually called avecha pasada. Avecha pasada. Avecha means that you actually has got confirmed experience. It's not just your normal mundane faith, like you say, oh, I faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. It's not just that, you actually have You know and see the Dhamma through your personal experience and verification. You have seen the dependent arising of phenomena. Because of that, you know that what the Buddha teaches is actually true. And that itself is what the Buddha calls confirmed experiential faith. It's not just the mundane faith, but faith that comes with wisdom, that you have experienced it yourself and you have confirmed experience. And that we call is avijja pasada. And only the Sotapan, actually has got this confirmed experiential. If not, then the faith is actually not considered as verified faith. And the Buddha says that as a Sotapan, you also are cleansed of a stain of stinginess. The Sotapan is really generous, he's open-handed. He delights in being magnanimous, and he actually responds to requests, and he delights in giving alms to people. He's very open-handed. He likes to help others. And as a Sotapan, he also is accomplished in wisdom. He's able to see arising and passing away. So from this sutta, we can see that in order for us to be accomplished in Sada, Sila, Jaga, Panya, like what Buddha tells Diga Janu, right? We should strive to become Sotapan in this very lifetime, so that we can actually perfect these four Sada, Sila, Jaga, Panya. Because as a Sotapan, we all know that the next destination is definitely a favorable destination, either as a Dewa or a human realm, and that itself is only up to 7 lifetimes, or up to the maximum 7 lifetimes. And why being accomplished, in Sada Sila Jaga Panya will bring happiness, as Buddha stated, by the Blessed One in the Sutta. Why is it so? We can see that when we see, that as a Sotapan, hell, is the 3 woeful planes are closed. The Sotapan does not actually. He does not descend anymore, to the woeful planes. Instead, he's actually going for the up to 7 lifetimes. Is either as a human or as a Deva. So that itself definitely you bring happiness in a very lifetime. And secondly, the Buddha says that if you're a Sotapan, it's just like the Buddha actually picks up a little bit of dust in his fingernail, right, and he compares it to the great earth. The sand on the great earth. So the Buddha says the suffering that remains for the Sotapan is just like the suffering on the fingernail compared to the great earth. So can you imagine how wonderful being a Sotapan is? And of course, being a Sotapan, like I mentioned to you, there's up to 7 lifetimes. So there's different types of Sotapan. One type is actually what we call the one seeder or the Ikabijin, and he only needs 1 more lifetime on the human plane, and he will attain full enlightenment. And the second one is what we call the family to family. He actually will be reborn 2 or 3 more times, before he attains liberation. And of course, the last one is what we call the 7 timers at most. Mostest means that this is probably the slowest, and he'll take up to 7 lifetimes, and before he becomes he's liberated. And even then, he actually migrates only among human beings and devas. And as a Sotapan, the Buddha says that you are headed for self-awakening. Your destination is irreversible. You definitely must be heading towards full enlightenment. And as a Sotapan, right, you actually have got long life, whether you're a human or as a Deva, you actually have got long life, and you have a lot of beauty and splendor, and you are very happy, and whether you are human or divine, you have a lot of great influence, and very long life. And the Buddha says that I tell you, Nandaka, that all these qualities of Sotapan is not because I heard it from any Brahman or any other ascetics. No, I tell you this because I have seen and I have known, seen, and realized it for myself. So that's what the Buddha actually tells everyone. And of course, the Buddha says to be a Sotapan, it's even better than if you are a universal monarch, because like as a universal monarch, you have actually sovereignty over a lot of a great kingdom, right? But the Buddha says to be a will-turning monarch is not it's not even equal to 1/16, of the gaining, of Sotapan, or Sotapati. It's not even worth 1/16. And why is that? Because as a will-turning monarch, you are not free from actually the possibility of going to hell, if not freed from the animal womb or the hungry ghost. Means you're still subject to the woeful plains, as long as you're not a Sotapan. So even if you are a king, the world king, I mean, it's nothing to be joyful about, because everything, is anatta, right? You will, once the conditions are not there, you're not the king anymore. Or even then, if you don't do practice well, you may actually descend to the woeful plane. So nothing to be happy about. So actually in Dhammapada 178, the Buddha says, so dominion over the earth, going to heaven, lordship over all the worlds, the fruit of stream entry excels all these. So that actually tells us that we must actually strive to attain Sotapatti in this very lifetime. So realizing the importance of being cultivating to be a Sotapan, how should you practice and cultivate the reaps of fruits of Sotapatti? Okay, so for this, I want to share with you this sutta from SN 5.5, where this Venerable Sariputta actually has a conversation with the Buddha, and the Buddha says that the factors, these four factors of stream entry. First of all, you must associate with superior persons. You must always treasure the opportunity to hear the true Dhamma, and you must have careful attention. You must have yoniso manasikara. When you listen to the Dhamma, you must pay attention and contemplate wisely, and you must practice in accordance with the Dhamma. So these are the four factors. And how do you practice to be a Sotapan? And you look at this sutta for SN 22.122, where this Venerable Sariputta actually tells his friend Venerable Ghatikara that if you actually attend in appropriate way to five aggregates, what we call the five khandhas, our body, feelings, perception, volitional formations and consciousness. These five khandhas, if you actually contemplate them as inconstant, as stressful, a disease, a cancer, an arrow, a painful, and empty and non-self. If you actually are able to contemplate these five aggregates as non-self, then it's possible, that if you attend to these five khandhas in such a manner, that you are able to realize the fruit of stream entry. So that's what Venerable Sariputta tells this Venerable Ghatikara. And if you look at this sutta also, they call it Ananda Sutta, you find that Venerable Ananda also attains stream entry by practicing in such a way. He also contemplates the five aggregates in terms of non-self, as empty, as empty of a self. And he actually learns this from this Venerable Punya Mantaniputta. And that's why you say that, and when I had heard this Dhamma explanation from this Venerable Punya Mantaniputta, I broke through to the Dhamma by looking at these five aggregates, these five khandhas as non-self and devoid of a permanent unchanging self. And if you ask yourself, then how do you actually contemplate the five aggregates? Because as meditators or when you actually meditate, right? How do you actually contemplate these five aggregates? So the Buddha actually tells us in this Samyutta Nikaya 35 that you should actually fix your sati, your mindfulness on the sixth sense basis at all times. Means you must actually have open awareness, wherever you are. Doesn't mean that you have to sit down cross-legged, and close your eyes. Even when you're working or when you're moving around, you fix your sati, your mindfulness on the six sense doors: your eye, your ear, your nose, your tongue, your body, and also your mind. And if you can, and be aware, of there's whatever external six sense objects that come into contact with your sense base, and contemplate, as all these as non-self. So with this, you'll be able to contemplate the five aggregates. So I can actually give you an example, in this sutta from 25.1, this Okanta Samyutta. For example, okay, for example, you see a plate of spaghetti or what that you find really delicious, then first of all, you actually understand how your mind reacts to this plate of spaghetti. And then you know that, oh, greed actually has arisen in you, or this craving, has arisen in you, and that's actually a sankhara, right? A volitional formation, and then you actually ask yourself, maybe you ask, how does this actually, this greed actually come about? Oh, it's because this greed actually come about because of pleasant feeling, and you contemplate, this pleasant feeling, it actually arises, because of perhaps, my perception of this plate of delicious spaghetti on the table, and how does this perception come about? Oh, this perception come about because of contact And how does this contact come about? Oh, it's because of eye consciousness. And how does this eye consciousness come about? Oh, it's because of my eye on contact with this plate of spaghetti. So if you see that due to this chain of conditionality and causality, you see that this craving itself is actually conditioned, but there's no permanent self. It's actually, it arises because it's constructed by causes and conditions. And because of that, it's devoid of a self. So it's anatta. Then, so for example, when you look at this sutta, this SN 25.1, so you see the Buddha is actually trying to tell the monks how they should actually contemplate by looking at the eye, the form, the eye consciousness, the eye contact, the feeling, as well as the intention, the sankhara, and because of that, from this process, you are actually contemplating the five aggregates, right? Because the eye, the object, that itself is form. And from there, there's a contact and there's also feeling. So feeling, you're contemplating feeling. Then you also contemplate your perception, and your feeling. And because of that, because of craving, you also contemplate the sankhara. So by this process, by fixing your attention on the six sense doors, you actually are already contemplating the five aggregates. So if you do this over and over again, then you'll be able to realize slowly, that the truth of anatta. And that's how the Buddha, this venerable Sariputta says that, one can become a stream enterer, just by looking at this. And again, in this sutta, the Buddha says that, in order for you to cultivate, to become a stream enterer, so the Buddha says you must see the causality, and conditionality, the condition, and you understand how the condition arises, the chain of the causality, how it arises, dependent on conditions and causes, and how it ceases, and the way leading to the cessation of this condition. And if you learn this, then you'll be able to attain, And I always like to also highlight this sutta of MN 146, where there is this wonderful teaching by Venerable Nandaka in terms of the oil lamp. So if you look at the oil lamp and contemplate, right? So when you see the oil lamp, the fire that's actually burning, on the, for example, a wick in the oil, or perhaps a candle, right? Then you actually contemplate, if this fire is actually is actually there, but can you actually say that this fire, is there or by itself without conditions? It just exists by itself. It has a permanent self. That itself is actually not tenable, right? It's impossible for you to say that, because the fire is there because of what? Of various conditions. It's there because of a candle, or because of the oil, and because there's a wick, and because of air, there's oxygen, there's air, and because of this, and the fire is able to exist. So can you actually say that the fire is a self? No, it's not. It is through these various causes and conditions that the fire is lighted, and this fire itself is anatta, is non-self. It's due to causes and conditions. So if any of these conditions dissipates, the fire also dissipates, it actually ceases and disintegrates. So that's why, when you see anatta, you also understand that, it's actually impermanent. And whatever is impermanent cannot actually be something everlasting happiness, right? It's dukkha, it's unsatisfactory. The same, he also gives another example of a shadow. A shadow basically is formed because of a shadow of perhaps like a tree, a tree branch shadow. It's there because of the sun. So the sun, when it shines down, the shadow is formed, on the floor. Can you say that the shadow is actually self, is there without any support or conditions? You cannot say that, because the shadow is formed through the conditions of the sun, the sunlight, and also the tree branch. So once the sun is removed, or the sun or the tree is removed, then the shadow automatically disappears, right? It is not there anymore. So it is anatta, is non-self, is devoid of a permanent self. So nobody can actually say that it actually has got a permanent self, in that regard. So once we see this, then slowly we will understand that this is actually non-self, like what the Buddha says, sabbe dhamma anatta. And because of that, because it's non-self, dependent, supported by causes, conditions, it is also anicca, it's impermanent. And because of that, it is dukkha, it is unsatisfactory. And through this practice over and over again, by fixing your attention on the six sense doors, looking at the five khandhas, also always looking, at how your mind reacts to the six sense objects and the six sense bases. Always remember how the mind reacts actually what the Buddha actually calls the kaya gata sati, the practice of always looking at your sankhara, looking at your mind consciousness, your mano vijnana, and always remember how it reacts to it. And from there, you see how is cause, dependently the reason. And because of that, you realize anatta, and from there, you slowly, grow kind of this passion and this illusion, right? Disenchanted, with a lot of things. And that's when letting go starts to develop. That's why you're able to let go through wisdom, not through any forced letting go, but through wisdom, you're able to let go slowly because you realize for yourself and you know and see for yourself. So from there, then, we'll be able to progress spiritually, in that regard. So in a nutshell, what I've actually described to you today in the Dhamma sharing, as layperson, it is important, that we attend to our mundane duties, like what the Buddha says in terms of being diligent, being looking after our be good and be skillful in our occupations, businesses, and also looking after our wealth, and then have good companionships, with good friends, and being also balanced in our livelihood, always making sure that we don't overspend, and we can be mindful of that. But at the same time, we must always remember what the Buddha actually tells King Pasenadi in terms of, the four mountains coming in our direction, the water that's gushing down from the mountain swiftly, swiftly and forcefully, and without stopping a single second, just like our lives, where we are moving slowly, moving towards the inevitable, and we must prepare for death, so make sure that when we board the next train, we know that the ticket we have in our pocket is one that's bright, that's actually going to a good destination, and not a black ticket that actually going to bring us to woeful plains. So make sure that we actually board the right train. So make sure that we develop ourselves spiritually by being accomplished in what? In Sada, Sila, Jaga, Panya. And to achieve that, we must strive to obtain Sotapatti, to be a Sotapan. And how do you do that? Contemplate your five aggregates. Fix your sati on six sense doors. Try to see the conditionality and see the non-self nature of all this. And slowly, over time, you'll be able to develop the perception of non-self, and you will be able to know and see, that because it's non-self, is also impermanent, is also anicca, and because of that, it's also dukkha. It's not satisfactory, and that's when you begin to see the emptiness, and you're able to let go slowly and gradually, and that's where we actually are able to progress and develop on the spiritual path. So from that, I've actually come to the end of my Dhamma talk. So I now open to the floor. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask me, I'm happy to answer them.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Brother Gatikara, for your timely sharing and very relevant sharing to all of us, as we are mostly lay Buddhists. Due to time constraint, we'll be only taking one question. And this question comes from Facebook. Is investing in the stock market, being ambitious to climb the corporate ladder, wanting to expand our business empire, eager to do good, to earn merits, desiring to be reborn in heavens, a form of greed?
Of course, as lay people, the Buddha actually tells us in various sutta that we should actually exert ourselves, to amass property, through the development of the four powers. Means, like, for example, you develop passionate enthusiasm in what you do, and you persevere, and then you have single-mindedness, in pursuing your objective, and as well at the same time you actually also have discretion, and you actually have got investigation as well of your mind, to be aware, that what you're doing, whether it's appropriate or inappropriate. So the Buddha actually encourages, the lay people, to actually advance, to amass property. But of course, we must ensure that in the process of advancing ourselves, materially, we must ensure, that we do not do anything. We do not actually do anything that's unwholesome, through inappropriate means, like what I actually just mentioned to you in the sutta, that where the Buddha talks about this causes of downfall to Deva that actually visited the Buddha, in Jetavana monastery. That if you're ambitious, and you want to climb the corporate ladder, yes, by all means, but through proper means. Do not actually engage in slender means by backbiting or backstabbing, or at the expense of others. That you need to actually resolve to such measures in order to achieve such achievements. Then you are actually not on the working on the right path. But investing in stock market itself, and to be good, in your job and to amass wealth, that is actually something that the Buddha encourages. You must you must actually attend to your mundane duties, but just to make sure that you do not actually resort to any inappropriate means. And of course, like you mentioned, all these strictly speaking, from the Dhamma itself, if you have any wanting or craving, to climb up the corporate ladder, or to amass wealth, or to expand your business, or to invest in stock market, of course, all these are actually forms of lobara. They are actually greed, but these are righteous greed. We must make sure that we actually accomplish this through proper means. We do not break our precepts. We do not commit any of the 10 unwholesome actions in the course of doing this. So as long as they are righteous greed, as lay people, we are not actually doing anything that's contrary to the Dhamma, and we do it through proper means, through the strength of our arms and strength of our brow. We do it, through proper means, and because of that, we amass a lot of property. That is something that's not contrary to Dhamma. But make sure you do not actually resort to shady and inappropriate means, like I mentioned just now. That actually undermine others. On your steps of getting to where you want to go. Make sure that you do not actually cause suffering to others, and commit unwholesome karma, to yourself in the process of doing that.
Thank you for answering the question, brother.